The vast emptiness of the Kelnar expanse stretched before the whisper song like a black ocean, dotted with shimmering stars and drifting debris. Captain Varan's multifaceted eyes scanned the expanse with practiced ease, but it was the tiny blip on the radar that made him narrow his gaze. A faint irregular signal. Not a ship, not a beacon. Something lost. Signal detected, Tiki said, her antennae twitching as she worked the console. The young Ixari technician's voice betrayed a hint of excitement. Life signs faint, but present. Origin. Coordinates suggest an escape pod. An escape pod? Here? Varan's mandibles clicked in annoyance. In these parts? It's a war zone. Who would launch a pod out here and expect rescue? Human, Tiki said, softly, almost to herself. I can tell by the signal pattern. It's encoded with Terran tech. A ripple of tension passed through the crew. Humanity was infamous across this sector, known for their brutal wars and rapid conquests. Most considered them a threat, not a neighbor. Harboring a human could mean trouble. Human, Varan repeated slowly. They bring nothing but chaos and war. He eyed his crew sharply. Do we risk it? If it's a trap, Captain, Tiki interrupted, her voice steady. The pod's life signs are weakening. We can't just leave them to die. She stepped forward, eyes blazing with resolve. Every life matters. I can help. The silence that followed was thick. Then, in a rare act of quiet defiance, Varan nodded. Very well. Prepare the rescue shuttle. The cold airlock hissed open as the shuttle glided toward the drifting pod, its faded white surface scarred and chipped. Mara Voss lay inside, motionless, but alive, her breathing shallow beneath cracked glass. Her Terran suit's internal systems blinked warnings. Life support was failing. Tiki knelt by the pod's hatch, fingers trembling as she interfaced with its controls. A flicker of warmth passed over her mandibles when the pod slowly unlocked. The hatch hissed open. Mara's eyes fluttered, struggling to focus on the blurry forms around her. Help, she croaked. Back aboard the whisper song, the medbay was cramped but equipped with what little could aid a wounded human. The Ixari healer, Vela, worked tirelessly, adjusting the delicate human medical tech that Mara barely tolerated. Mara's breathing was ragged. Scars from a recent battle stained her uniform, and bruises mottled her pale skin. Despite the language, barrier, and vastly different physiologies, Vela's hands moved with gentle certainty, murmuring calming sounds. Tiki watched silently, torn between awe and fear. The human was a living paradox, a fragile creature shaped by fire and steel. She's more than what the stories say, Tiki whispered to herself. As Mara slowly regained consciousness, suspicion among the crew grew. Whispers filled the corridors. Why save a human? They are enemies. Tiki confronted the murmurs openly one evening. She was helpless, she said firmly. If we abandon her, what separates us from the pirates and mercenaries? Compassion is our strength. Captain Varan's gaze hardened, but he allowed her words to linger unanswered. The past weighed heavy. Humans had burned planets, annihilated species. Yet here, in this fragile pod, was a survivor. Someone who depended on mercy. Days passed. Mara's strength returned with each careful dose of medicine and nutrients. She learned to speak a few words of Ixari, her voice weak but steady. In turn, Tiki picked up Terran phrases, fascinated by the determination etched in Mara's eyes. One night, under the shimmering light of distant stars, Mara told a story of Earth's wild landscapes, of human resilience against impossible odds. We fight not because we want war, she said softly, but because survival demands it. Tiki listened, heart pounding. For the first time, the stories of barbaric humans melted away, replaced by something profoundly human. Hope. But the galaxy was never quiet. Outside, danger loomed in shadows unseen. The Whisper Song's crew knew that harboring a human was a gamble that could cost them dearly. Yet none dared question Tiki's quiet vow. They once helped a human. Now they would stand by her, no matter what the stars might bring. The hum of the Whisper Song's engines was a constant undercurrent, a reminder that they were still far from safety. But inside the ship, in the cramped medbay, time seemed to slow. Mara Voss lay on the narrow biobed, her chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. The Ixari healer, Vela, hovered nearby, her multi-jointed limbs steady and precise as she monitored Mara's vitals. Her heart is weak, Vela murmured, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. But she will survive, if we are careful. Tiki stood beside the healer, watching intently. She could see the lines of pain etched into Mara's face, the way her eyelids fluttered as she fought exhaustion. Tiki felt an unfamiliar tug in her chest, a strange mixture of pity and admiration. The human had survived so much already. Can she eat? Tiki asked. Vela shook her head. Not yet. The trauma is too severe. We'll start with nutrient injections. Mara's eyes cracked open. The room tilted slightly as she struggled to focus, but when her gaze landed on Tiki, something shifted. Recognition? Gratitude? Or simply the relief of a friendly face? Water, Mara whispered, voice cracked and raw. Tiki nodded, quickly fetching a small container and holding it to Mara's lips. The human drank greedily, her eyes never leaving the technician's face. Days passed, and Mara's strength slowly returned. She was a patient learner, fascinated by the strange forms and colors of the Whisper Song. Tiki took every opportunity to teach her the Ixari language, careful with pronunciation and gentle in correction. In return, Mara shared scraps of Terran speech, her accent thick but clear. Friend, Mara said one afternoon, her voice barely above a whisper. You, friend? Tiki smiled. Yes, friend. Trust blossomed in the small moments, shared meals, quiet conversations, and long hours spent repairing the ship. The crew watched with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. Some whispered that humans were untrustworthy, their history marked by endless conflict and betrayal. Captain Voran, ever cautious, kept his distance, but observed closely. He had ruled the Kelnar expanse for years, navigating its shifting alliances and threats. He knew that harboring a human was dangerous, could bring down empires. Yet something about Mara's presence unsettled the usual certainties. One evening, Tiki found Mara sitting alone in the observation deck, staring out at the swirling nebula beyond the viewport. The colors, deep purples and fiery oranges, reflected in Mara's tired eyes. Beautiful, Mara murmured. Earth has skies like this, sometimes. Tiki sat beside her. Tell me about Earth. Mara hesitated, then began. Earth was wild, dangerous, but full of life. We fought wars, yes, but not because we wanted to, because survival demanded it. Her voice cracked with memory, and Tiki leaned closer, sensing the weight behind her words. We humans, we're stubborn. We endure. Even when everything seems lost, we keep fighting. Because if we don't, no one else will. Tiki nodded slowly. I understand more than you think. Their bond deepened, bridging worlds that history had tried to keep apart. Mara taught Tiki about human resilience, the will to protect those they love, the sacrifices made in the name of hope. In turn, Tiki showed Mara the Ixari's ancient rituals of healing and renewal, how even the smallest act of kindness could ripple through the stars. But outside the medbay, danger crept ever closer. One night, the ship's sensors flickered, an alert too faint to fully decode. Tiki's antennae twitched with unease. Pirate vessels, she whispered to Captain Voran, who stood nearby. Approaching fast. Voran's mandibles clicked sharply. They know we harbor a human, that makes us a target. The crew scrambled to battle stations. Mara, still weak, was hurriedly moved to a secure chamber. Tiki stayed by her side, holding her hand, a silent promise that she would not face this alone. As the pirate ships closed in, the Whisper Song's engines roared to life. Laser cannons lit the void, sending streaks of light across the darkness. The freighter wasn't built for combat. It was fragile against the well-armed pirates. But the crew fought with desperation and grit. Every bolt fired, every evasive maneuver, was a testament to the unlikely alliance forged in the cold reaches of space. After hours of tense battle, the pirates retreated, momentarily. The Whisper Song was battered but intact. The crew breathed a collective sigh of relief. Tiki looked at Mara, whose pale face was streaked with grime but shining with quiet determination. "We survived," Mara said softly, "because you stood by me." Tiki smiled, a fierce light in her eyes. "Because you reminded us what it means to be strong." That night, as the ship drifted toward an uncertain future, Tiki made a decision. She would send a message, a secret, encoded distress call. Not just for herself or her crew, but for the one person who might answer, the human who once called her friend. Because sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness could change the fate of entire galaxies. Years had passed since the Whisper Song had rescued Mara Voss from the void. The galaxy did not forget, but it rarely forgave. The war between the Terran Federation and the Varlac Dominion had escalated, drawing sharp battle lines across star charts. The Kelnar Expanse, once a trading hub, had become a lawless frontier. The Whisper Song itself had changed. The once proud Ixari freighter now bore scars of battles lost and compromises made. Its paint was chipped, its engines patched with scavenged parts. Its crew was a motley collection of smugglers, mercenaries, and outcasts, all eking out a living at the edges of civilized space. Tiki, now a seasoned technician with graying antennae, stood on the ship's bridge, her mandibles clicking softly as she reviewed the latest sensor logs. The encoded distress call she had sent years ago had gone unanswered, swallowed by the endless waves of space. The memory of Mara, once vivid and bright, had faded into a distant echo. Yet the lessons Mara had taught her lingered like a heartbeat beneath the surface: resilience, hope, and the power of unexpected alliances. The Whisper Song's latest mission was a dangerous run through Varlac-controlled sectors, smuggling medical supplies to a rebel faction hiding in asteroid caves. The crew moved silently, aware that discovery meant death or worse. Captain Voran paced the bridge, jaw tight. "We're ghosts," he muttered. "No official Terran patrols, no alliances, just shadows and whispers." Tiki's gaze flicked to the viewport, where the swirling nebula cast eerie colors across the ship's hull. "Sometimes shadows hide, more than danger," she said softly. "Sometimes they hide hope." Their run was nearly complete when the ship's sensors flared red. A squadron of pirate ships emerged from the nebula's edge, engines glowing with hostile intent. The pirates were known as the Iron Claws, merciless and brutal, infamous for hunting down freighters with ruthless efficiency. "Ambush," Voran growled. "Prepare for battle." The Whisper Song shuddered as laser fire struck its shields. Alarms blared, throwing the crew into chaos. Tiki raced to her station, fingers flying over controls as she tried to stabilize the damaged systems. But this time, something was different. The pirates' tactics were relentless, precise. It was as if they had studied the Whisper Song's every move. In the chaos, Tiki managed to send a faint encoded signal, a ghostly call for help, in the hope that someone, somewhere, might answer. Days later, on the bridge of the Terran dreadnought Valiant, Admiral Mara Voss stood rigid, her face illuminated by the flickering holoscreen. The signal was faint, buried beneath layers of noise and interference, but unmistakable. "Mara," her communications officer said cautiously, "it's from the Whisper Song. That old freighter near the Kelnar Expanse." Mara's eyes hardened. "I know exactly who's sending it." Memories flooded back of cold corridors, whispered words, and a fragile life saved against impossible odds. She recalled the young Ixari technician, the gentle healer, and the bond they had formed in the shadow of war. "Prepare a fleet detachment," Mara ordered, voice sharp as steel. We're going in. No treaty, no diplomacy, just rescue. Her subordinates protested. The political ramifications were severe. The Terran Federation's official stance was one of cautious neutrality in this contested region, violating that risked war. But Mara was resolute. "They once helped me," she said quietly. "Now it's our turn." Back aboard the Whisper Song, the crew fought to keep their battered ship alive. Each hit tore at their nerves, and the relentless attack seemed designed to break their spirit. Tiki's heart raced as the comm system crackled with static. Hope flickered briefly. Had their call been answered? Unknown to the crew, dozens of Terran warships slipped through the nebula's edge, guided by Mara's command. Silent and imposing, the fleet moved with precision born of countless battles. As the pirate ships closed in for the final strike, the void suddenly erupted with firepower. Plasma bolts and missiles tore through the Ironclaw's formation, scattering them like leaves in a storm. The Whisper Song crew watched in disbelief as the Terran fleet formed a protective ring around their fragile freighter. "Humans don't forget," Tiki whispered, awe filling her voice. The battle was brief, but decisive. The pirates fled or were destroyed, leaving the Whisper Song battered but free. As calm returned, Tiki stood on the bridge, gazing at the distant fleet. Somewhere within those ships was the woman who had once been lost and now led them to salvation. Hope, she realized, was a force no one could extinguish, not even the darkest void. The Whisper Song drifted cautiously near the edges of Varlac space, its battered hull barely holding together beneath layers of patchwork repairs. The nebula's swirling gas clouds distorted sensors and scrambled communications, creating a shroud of silence that felt both protective and perilous. Captain Voran's eyes flicked nervously between sensor readouts and star charts, calculating every possible escape route. Approaching the expanse's fringe, Voran announced, his mandibles tightening. "We move fast and keep low. No unnecessary signals. We cannot afford attention." Tiki sat at the comm station, her antennae twitching as she monitored the scrambled channels. Despite the efforts to remain hidden, a gnawing unease had settled over the crew. The silence was heavy with the threat of ambush. The tension broke suddenly. A sharp, piercing alarm blared through the ship. Voran's multifaceted eyes darted to the main screen. "Contact!" Multiple hostile signatures emerging. From the nebula! On the view screen, ghostly shapes materialized. Sleek pirate vessels of the Iron Claws, their hulls marked with jagged red insignias and bristling weaponry. The pirates had found them. Pirate fleet. "They've been waiting," Voran growled. The Whisper Song shuddered as plasma bolts tore into its shield array. Sparks cascaded along the walls and the ship lurched violently. "Shields at 40% and falling," Tiki shouted, fingers dancing over the console. "Communications are jammed. We can't call for help." Voran bellowed orders, but panic was creeping through the crew like wildfire. The Whisper Song was no warship. It was a relic patched together with scraps and hope. The pirate ships encircled them, closing in with merciless precision. Boarding drones detached like swarming hornets, targeting the freighter's outer hull with magnetic claws and plasma cutters. Alarms blared as doors sealed and bulkheads shifted into lockdown. In the dim, flickering light of the medbay, Mara, Voss, now stronger but still recovering, gripped Tiki's hand tightly. "This isn't over," she said quietly, her voice steely. "They want us. We have to be ready." Tiki's antennae flattened against her head, a sign of fear and determination. "I'm sending a distress signal. It's encrypted. Only a human fleet might recognize it." Mara nodded, eyes blazing. "Do it." The distress beacon was a ghost message, weaving through the electronic noise and the pirates' jamming signals. It carried a desperate plea and a signature code, a code known only to a handful of Terran allies. On board the Whisper Song, time stretched unbearably. The crew fought with everything they had, repelling boarding attempts, sealing breaches, and patching critical systems. Every second was a battle. Outside, the pirate flagship unleashed its full arsenal, battering the freighter's shields. The freighter rocked violently, threatening to tear apart. Voran's voice cut through the chaos. Hold fast. We survive, or we die together. Tiki stayed at her post, praying her message would reach the right ears. The weight of years and memories pressed on her. The friendship forged in pain, the promise made in the shadow of war. They once helped a human, she thought. Now maybe a whole fleet will come to rescue them. Far beyond the nebula, deep in Terran space, the distress signal crackled faintly through the communication matrix aboard the dreadnought Valiant. Admiral Mara Voss stood rigid at the command console, the encoded beacon unmistakable. They're alive, Mara whispered, her mind racing back to the Ixari crew who had saved her so many years ago. Without hesitation, Mara's voice was firm, decisive. Prepare the fleet. We move out immediately. Back on the Whisper Song, the pirate assault reached a fever pitch. Boarding parties overwhelmed outer decks. Flames erupted, and the freighter's systems began failing. Tiki clutched Mara's hand as they sealed themselves in the command chamber. Help is coming, she promised. Outside, the void seemed to hold its breath. Suddenly, the darkness shattered. A streak of light tore across the nebula as Terran warships dropped out of warp, their sleek, armored hulls blazing with power and authority. Plasma cannons roared. Missiles streaked through space, and the pirate ships were caught in a storm of relentless fire. The Whisper Song's crew stared wide-eyed as the Terran fleet formed a protective ring, pushing the pirates back with overwhelming force. For the first time in years, hope burned bright. The Whisper Song's battered hull groaned but held. The pirates retreated, their threats broken by the arrival of the human fleet. Tiki released a shaky breath, her antennae trembling with relief. Mara smiled faintly, strength renewed. They never forget, Mara said softly. Those who show kindness are never left behind. Captain Voran nodded solemnly. We owe them more than we realized. The battle was over, for now. But the bonds forged in fire had only just begun. The aftermath of the battle left the Whisper Song limping through the void. Its hull was battered, panels scorched from laser fire, and internal systems groaned beneath makeshift repairs. Yet despite the damage, the spirit of its crew blazed brighter than ever. The bridge was a hive of activity. Captain Voran stood over the navigation console, eyes sharp as he plotted a course out of pirate-controlled space. Tiki worked beside him, her antennae twitching with a mixture of exhaustion and relief. Fleet arrival confirmed, the comm officer reported, voice steady but urgent. Outside the viewport, the distant glint of starships appeared. Sleek, imposing, Terran dreadnoughts and cruisers, their formation tight and purposeful. The Terran fleet had come just as Mara had promised. Mara Voss stood on the command deck of the flagship Valiant, her gaze steady as she watched the Whisper Song's battered silhouette grow larger on the tactical display. Years of war had tempered her resolve, but the sight of the battered freighter stirred something deeper, a bond forged in sacrifice and trust. Open hailing frequencies, she ordered. Let them know they're not alone. Static cleared, and Tiki's voice crackled over the comm channel. This is the Whisper Song. To all Terran forces, we are grateful for your timely arrival. Whisper Song, you are safe now, Mara replied, her tone firm but compassionate. Prepare for escort out of hostile territory. The crew of the Whisper Song gathered on the main deck, eyes fixed on the viewport as the fleet formed a protective perimeter around their fragile vessel. There was a silent awe among the Ixari and others. This display of power was unlike anything they had seen. Voran's mandibles twitched in a rare smile. The humans may be fierce, but their loyalty is fiercer. Mara stepped aboard the Whisper Song shortly after docking. She moved with a calm authority, her presence both commanding and comforting. Tiki, Mara greeted, her eyes meeting the technicians. You kept the promise. Tiki bowed her head respectfully. We did what we could, for a friend. Mara's gaze swept over the crew, nodding approvingly. Then we fight together. Not just for survival, but for a future where alliances like this can flourish. The Terran fleet's presence shifted the balance of power in the Kelnar expanse. Brede, Attacks waned, and trade routes began to reopen under the watchful eyes of the dreadnoughts. The whisper song became a symbol, a beacon of hope amid chaos. But Mara knew the war was far from over. Terran and Varlek forces still clashed across countless systems. The fragile peace depended on alliances built on trust and sacrifice. As the fleet escorted the whisper song to a secure base, Mara and Tiki shared a quiet moment in the observation lounge. The stars stretched endlessly before them, their cold light softened by the ship's glass. "You once told me humans fight because they must," Tiki said thoughtfully. "I'm beginning to understand." Mara smiled faintly. "We fight because we believe in something bigger than ourselves. Family, honor, survival. Sometimes that fight lasts lifetimes." Tiki's antennae quivered with emotion. "And sometimes it brings entire fleets to answer a single call for help." The rescue of the whisper song was just the beginning. Word spread quickly through the expanse. Stories of a human-led fleet coming to the aid of unlikely allies. Rebel factions and independent worlds took notice, reaching out for support. The fragile network of resistance grew stronger, but amid the optimism, Mara received troubling intelligence. The Varlek Dominion was mobilizing a massive fleet, preparing to crush the burgeoning alliance before it could take root. "We have little time," Mara told her commanders. "This war will decide more than territory. It will decide the fate of trust between species." Varan stood at her side. "Then we stand ready, together." The Whisper Song's crew prepared for the battles ahead, their bond with the Terran, fleet sealing a new chapter in the war for the galaxy. A chapter where hope and honor could stand against the darkness. As the Whisper Song sailed alongside its human protectors, Tiki looked toward the stars with quiet confidence. They once helped. A human, she thought. Now the galaxy would never forget. The Whisper Song rested in the orbit of a fortified space station nestled within a remote asteroid field. The facility, an ancient relic of a long-lost civilization, had been repurposed as a strategic base for the Rebel Alliance. Its battered walls echoed with the hum of activity, ships docking, supplies being unloaded, and crews briefing for the battles to come. Captain Varan paced the command deck, his mandibles clicking in thought. The weight of what lay ahead pressed heavily on him. The Varlek Dominion's armada was gathering, an unstoppable tidal wave of warships and death. Intelligence estimated their forces would outnumber the Alliance by nearly 3-1. "Every system on edge," Varan muttered. "If we lose this fight, it's not just the Alliance, we lose everything." Tiki sat beside him, her antennae twitching as she monitored sensor feeds. "Our Terran allies are bringing reinforcements. Admiral Voss is coordinating a multi-pronged strike." Varan nodded grimly. "Their courage is undeniable, but courage alone won't win this war." Elsewhere in the station, Mara Voss was hard at work. Her sharp eyes scanned battle plans projected on the holo table, adjusting fleet movements and logistics. She was no longer just the rescued human. She had become a leader, a symbol of unity between species. Her presence inspired loyalty among the diverse crews. "Prepare the fleet," Mara commanded. "We engage at dawn. We fight not just for survival, but for the chance to forge a future where no one fights alone." A young Terran lieutenant approached, urgency in his voice. "Admiral, scouts have detected a Varlak detachment moving through the nebula. They might try to flank us." Mara's jaw tightened. "Then we'll meet them head on. No surprises." Back on the Whisper Song, Tiki oversaw preparations for what could be their final mission. The ship's hull had been reinforced. Engines, calibrated for evasive maneuvers, and weapon systems upgraded with Terran technology. Yet beneath the upgrades and tactical plans, the crew's anxiety was palpable. In the mess hall, quiet conversations turned to whispered hopes and fears. "We've survived worse," one crew member said. "But this feels different," another nodded. "Because this time we're not alone." That evening, Mara and Tiki stood together on the observation deck, gazing out at the vast expanse of stars. The nebula glowed faintly in the distance, an ominous reminder of the coming battle. "You once said humans fight because they believe in something bigger than themselves." Tiki said softly. Mara smiled faintly. It's true. But now I see it's not just about belief, it's about trust. Trust in others to stand beside you when the darkness comes. Tiki's antennae quivered with emotion. And you trust us? We've come too far not to, Mara replied. We'll fight side by side, for the sake of everyone who believes in a better future. The night passed with restless anticipation. At dawn, the Whisper Song and the Terran fleet slipped silently from the station, engines humming low as they entered the nebula's swirling mists. Enemy scouts appeared almost immediately, sleek Varlak ships cutting through the gas clouds seeking the Alliance's position. The battle erupted with brutal suddenness. Laser fire streaked across the void. Missiles exploded in fiery blossoms and starships twisted through the nebula's haze, jockeying for position. Tiki manned the Whisper Song's weapons console with steady hands, directing fire at enemy vessels, attempting to flank the fleet. Beside her, Captain Varan coordinated evasive maneuvers, his voice calm amidst the chaos. Mara's flagship, the Valiant, led the charge, its massive hull absorbing punishment as it unleashed volleys of plasma and ion cannons. The Alliance fought fiercely, each ship a vital thread in the tapestry of resistance. But the Varlak were relentless, their numbers pressing hard. One by one, Allied ships fell, their hulls breached, and crews lost to the cold void. In the thick of the fighting, the Whisper Song took a direct hit, the hull buckling as explosions rocked the ship. Damage report, Varan barked. Tiki's fingers flew over the console. Hull integrity at 60%. Shields holding, but weakening. Engines stable, but overheating. Varan gritted his mandibles. Hold her together, we're not done yet. Suddenly, a massive Varlak dreadnought loomed into view, its broadside weapons targeting the fragile freighter. Tiki's antennae twitched. This was the moment that would decide everything. Mara, we need support. Tiki called into the com. The Valiant answered immediately, sending a squadron of fighters to intercept the dreadnought's assault. Mara's voice crackled over the channel. Stay strong, Whisper Song. We're with you. The fight raged on, a brutal clash of wills and technology, and through it all the bond between the Whisper Song's crew and their human allies held firm. As the sun rose beyond the nebula's edge, the battle reached a tipping point. The Varlak forces, battered and disorganized, began to retreat. In the aftermath, the Alliance counted their losses, but celebrated a hard-fought victory. The Whisper Song floated battered but unbroken. On the observation deck, Mara and Tiki stood side by side, watching the stars grow bright with the promise of dawn. We fought together, Mara said softly, and together, we'll keep fighting. Until this war ends, Tiki nodded. For the future we all deserve. The victory at the nebula's edge had bought the Alliance precious time, but the scars of battle were deep. The Whisper Song drifted in orbit around the rebel base, its hull scarred, engines sputtering, and crew weary beyond measure. Captain. Varan stood rigid on the command deck, staring at the flickering holoscreens showing fleet casualties. The numbers weighed on him like a boulder. Friends lost, ships destroyed, futures shattered. Tiki approached quietly, antennae lowered in respect. The fleet owes you their lives, Captain. Varan's mandibles twitched, a faint grimace. We owe them more than that. We owe them everything. Mara. Voss was already deep in council with the Alliance leaders. The Varlak Dominion was retreating, but their intentions were clear. They would return with greater force. This war was far from over. We fight tonight, Mara declared, voice hard as steel. But the true battle is coming. We need every ally, every resource if we're to stand a chance. Her gaze swept the room, landing briefly on Tiki. And we'll fight it together. Back aboard the Whisper Song, the crew repaired their battered vessel. The medbay was filled with wounded, both Ixari and human. Shared pain, bridged old prejudices, forging bonds of empathy and understanding. Tiki moved among the injured, her mandibles clicking softly as she tended to burns and fractures with practiced care. The memory of Mara's rescue years ago, when her own life had hung by a thread, felt alive in her touch. Suddenly, The ship's alarms blared. Sensors detected an unknown ship approaching at high speed. The incoming vessel was a sleek, stealth-class cruiser, bearing no recognizable markings. Suspicion rippled through the crew. The Whisper Song's comm officer hesitated before opening a channel. "This is Captain Voran of the Whisper Song. Identify yourself." A cold, distorted voice replied, "I am Jarek Thal, envoy of the Varlak Dominion. I come with a proposition." Voran's eyes narrowed. "Speak quickly." Jarek's message was clear. A faction within the Varlak Dominion, disillusioned with the war, sought peace. They offered a truce, a ceasefire, if the Terran-led alliance would agree to meet and negotiate. Mara listened, her mind racing. Could this be a trap, or a genuine chance for peace? She convened a secret council. "We cannot afford to trust blindly," she warned. "But neither can we refuse every olive branch." The decision was made to meet the Varlak envoy at a neutral space station, one of the few places where fragile diplomacy could be attempted. As the Whisper Song and the Terran fleet approached the rendezvous point, tension was thick in the air. The fragile hope for peace was shadowed by the ghosts of war. The meeting was tense. Varlak envoys, draped in dark uniforms, faced Terran and rebel leaders. Words were exchanged carefully, each side wary. Mara's voice cut through the silence. "We remember what the Varlak did, what they threatened to do. But we also remember who stood by us when it mattered." Tiki stepped forward, her antennae raised. "They once helped a human when no one else would. Now we extend the same hand." But Jarek's faction was small, and their influence limited. As talks dragged on, a sudden explosion rocked the station. Alarms screamed. The station shuddered violently. Saboteurs, loyal to the Dominion's hardliners, had struck. Chaos erupted. Rebel and Varlak forces scrambled to contain the damage. Mara's voice rang out over the station's comms. "This attack ends here. We fight for peace, not destruction." Tiki helped evacuate wounded while Voran coordinated defense efforts. The station became a battlefield as trust shattered in an instant. In the chaos, Mara found herself face to face with Jarek. His eyes held regret, but also resolve. "We wanted peace," he said quietly. "But there are those who will never allow it." Mara nodded. "Then we fight, not just to survive, but to protect that hope." The saboteurs were defeated, but the cost was high. Lives lost, alliances tested. As the dust settled, the fragile hope for peace remained, but only just. Back on the Whisper Song, Tiki stood at the viewport, staring into the stars. They once helped a human, she thought. And now, we pay that debt, in blood. The stars beyond the viewport seemed colder now, distant and indifferent to the struggle that had unfolded within their midst. The Whisper Song hovered quietly near the rebel base, its crew weary but resolute. The scars of betrayal and bloodshed ran deep, but they had endured. Captain Voran stood silently at the command deck, eyes reflecting the pale starlight. He felt the weight of every life lost and every promise made. Around him, the crew moved, with quiet determination, mending, preparing, and waiting. The alliance had suffered greatly, but the war was far from over. The Varlak Dominion's hardliners had made their message clear. Peace was a lie, and only total domination could end the conflict. Mara Voss paced the command room of the Valiant, her mind a whirlwind of strategy and hope. The failed negotiations at the neutral station had only hardened her resolve. If the Dominion wanted war, then war they would have. She tapped the console, bringing up a massive star chart dotted with fleet positions and supply lines. "Our window is closing," she told her officers. "We must strike decisively before the Dominion consolidates." Her eyes caught on a message incoming from an unexpected source, the remnants of the faction that had tried for peace, now fully allied with the rebels. "We have new intelligence," the message read. "A Dominion superweapon is being deployed. If it becomes operational, it will crush the Alliance." The news sent a ripple through the fleet. The superweapon, a massive dreadnought-sized artillery platform hidden deep within the asteroid belt, could destroy entire planets with a single shot. If it fell into Dominion hands unchecked, the rebellion would be extinguished. Mara's voice was steady, but fierce. We must destroy it. Tonight. The fleet gathered silently, the hum of engines a low pulse in the void. Among them, the Whisper Song sailed alongside Terran dreadnoughts and allied cruisers, its once fragile frame now reinforced with the latest technology. Captain Varan addressed his crew in the briefing hall. This mission will test everything we have. We face not just enemy fire, but the shadows of doubt and fear. But remember, they once helped a human. Now, we repay that debt. Together. The room echoed with quiet determination. As the fleet approached the asteroid belt, the vast superweapon came into view, a colossal structure anchored to a spinning asteroid, its massive barrels pointed toward rebel space. Defense turrets bristled and fighter squadrons swarmed like angry hornets. The battle erupted with blinding fury. Tiki manned the Whisper Song's weapons console, directing coordinated strikes on the platform's shield generators. Explosions tore through the asteroid's surface as allied ships weaved through deadly fire. Beside her, Captain Varan piloted with steady hands, weaving through laser fire and missile barrages. Enemy fighters incoming, Tiki warned. Launching interceptors. The Whisper Song's gun decks roared to life, their laser beams slicing through swarms of enemy craft. Meanwhile, Mara's Valiant led the main assault, absorbing enemy fire as its own weapons pounded. The superweapons core. Keep pressure on their shields, Mara commanded. We have to bring that platform down before it fires. The seconds stretched, each one a heartbeat of tension and hope. Suddenly, the superweapon powered up. A terrifying energy charge built, bathing the asteroid belt in eerie blue light. We have to disable it now, Mara shouted. Fire everything. The fleet unleashed a torrent of firepower. The Whisper Song's modified plasma cannons found their mark, ripping through the energy conduits feeding the superweapon's main cannon. With a final, deafening explosion, the dreadnought-sized platform shattered, its immense guns silenced, forever. Cheers erupted across the fleet's comms, but the battle was not yet over. The Dominion's remaining ships regrouped for a last desperate strike. Varan gritted his mandibles. Hold the line, for our friends, for our future. Together, Terran and alien crews fought with renewed vigor, turning back the enemy's assault. The Dominion fleet fractured and fled. As the dust settled, the Whisper Song and the Terran fleet drifted among the stars, a united force, battered but unbroken. Mara turned to Varan and Tiki, her eyes bright with unspoken gratitude. You saved me once. Now, we've saved each other. Tiki's antennae twitched with emotion. It's more than a debt now. It's a bond. Varan nodded. A bond that will carry us through whatever comes next. Far beyond the battlefield, word spread of the Alliance's victory, the story of a fragile freighter that had once helped a human in need, and years later was rescued by a whole fleet. The galaxy began to change. Old grudges faded, replaced by new hope. In the quiet moments aboard the Whisper Song, Mara looked out at the stars and whispered, "We fight for a future where no one stands alone." And in that moment, beneath the endless sky, the Alliance knew it was a future worth fighting for. The end.